Good morning, welcome, and we're happy to have you all with us today as people are entering the room, finding their seats and a place to sit at the table. Please enter your name and where you're logging in from in the chat. Give us an idea of who's here. And if you want to be in touch with others during the course of this event or afterwards, you can put your email address in there as well. So as you're entering the event today, feel free to put your name and your location and maybe your email address in the chat, and that way others will know who's here. I want to welcome all of you. My name is Doug Dixon. I'm the secretary of the Leadership Council of the Encore Network, and also co-chair of the Over 50 Employment Affinity Group, which is presenting this program today. So thanks to all of you for being a part of this. And thanks also to our sponsor for today's program, which is WAVE, WAHVE. That stands for Work at Home Vintage Experts. And WAVE is a recruiting agency that places people into insurance companies and agencies to work on a contract basis. And we'll learn more about that when we get to our panel. The agenda today is to, first of all, start with Chris Farrell, who is our speaker today and panel moderator. I'll introduce him in a minute. And then we'll turn to our panel, and then we'll invite your questions, and we'll talk a little about some resources that we're putting together, and then we'll close out. So that's our agenda. I want to remind everybody to stay on mute. That way background noises won't interrupt the conversation. We invite you to be a part of the conversation by using chat. And in particular, if you have questions, put them in the chat as early as possible. We'll try to get them to them as we go, or those that we don't, we'll get to at the end during the audience Q&A segment. We are recording this program today, so you don't need to take notes. We will share the recording in a follow-up email along with resources, slides, and so on. So you can take notes if you want to, but it's not mandatory. You can listen and participate and not have to worry about that. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Chris Farrell. Chris, many of you may know as the author of Purpose and a Paycheck and Unretirement, two books that are very close to our hearts. Chris has been a good friend of Encore and the Encore Network over the years. He is a journalist, an author. He is a regular contributor to Marketplace, heard weekdays on NPR. He also is a contributor to Next Avenue, Forbes, Minnesota Public Radio, on, many other outlets. So, Chris, it's a pleasure to welcome you. I know you're an expert in this field, but you're also a freelancer. You do much work by freelance. So I think it's entirely appropriate that you should be part of a conversation that has to do with independent work. So welcome, and I'm going to turn the program around over to you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I'm really honored to be here. And I'm really looking forward to learning more from our panelists and also the questions from the audience. And I just want to make a few remarks about non-traditional employment, among experienced workers. And now we're going to share my slide, and let's hope this works. Share. There we go. Can everybody see that? That's working okay? Good. Yeah. You all know this, right? You're part of the Encore Network. I mean, you realize it, but I think it's still more broadly underappreciated, just how many people are starting their own business, whether it's self-employed, solopreneur, small business owner. And what we're going to be focusing on is the self-employed, the freelancer, the independent contractor, the gig economy worker. And I'm just going to use the word self-employed just to cover everything. And the data sources are mixed when you look at it, but everything that I've seen shows that self-employment increases as you get older. And one of the best studies in the field, let's see if we can go to this one. There we go. Good. It's contract workers at older ages by 3 economists. And this slide summarizes their key insight. And they take a deeper than typical dive into several data sources about self-employment. And, the thing that really stands out to me is you look at 18 to 29, it's 18.8%. 30 to 49 is 19.6%. But boy, when you get to 60 to 64, 29.6%. 70 to 74, 58.7%. And the number just sort of keeps increasing. And this is something of a guess on my part, a forecast, but I expect in the years to come that self-employment is going to become an even bigger, a more popular choice among experienced workers. For instance, it's really one of the most powerful trends that comes out of the pandemic. Applications to form business, 5.5 million last year, which was a record. And the pace has slowed down somewhat this year, but it's still 80% above the monthly average prior to COVID. And similarly, let's go to the next slide. When you look at the number of independent workers, and so from this particular study, that's defined as freelancers, gig workers, independent contractors, and solopreneurs, increased 91%. And this is according to MBO Partners. And you're going from 13.6 million in 2020 to 26 million in 2023. And what's really striking is that this rate of growth is a lot faster than the average annual rate of 2% that was from 2011 to 2019. So when you consider this backdrop, I think it's a safe forecast, not going out on a limb, that self-employment among experienced workers will stay strong and will likely to increase. And what are the attractions of self-employment with age? Let's go there. I mean, there are several factors behind the trend. For one thing, older workers, they have skill, they have knowledge, they have experience. Most importantly, they have a network of contacts that they developed over the years. Financing self-employment is usually a little easier for them because they have some resources, some savings to tap, and the internet and various information technologies have lowered the cost of self-employment. And for those who are under age 65, the health insurance market is still tough. But the Affordable Care Act has really changed the nature of the self-employment decision. Before the Affordable Care Act, it was just really a lot worse then. And self-employment is a good fit, or can be a good fit for the next stage of life. As people, approach retirement, they may have personal reasons. They often have financial reasons that they want to keep earning an income, but they don't want to work 40 to 50 hours a week. They may want to say goodbye to their manager. They may want to say goodbye to their colleagues for the last time, and they may want to work fewer hours or have a more flexible work arrangement. Sadly, age discrimination is frankly another reason why people go to self-employment. It allows you to skip the whole hiring manager algorithms, and actually your age, if you're a contract worker, an independent worker, can actually be to your advantage because you are considered an experienced worker and people know that you have this skill. And I don't think you can underestimate just how much fun it can be to take your skill, your knowledge, your experience, and then just use it, maybe in a different field, maybe in a different sector of the economy, going from the for-profit to the not-for-profit, and you meet new people. And there was this key quote. There was a report by Bain and Company, Better with Age, the Rising Importance of Older Workers. And it was a global look. But here's the key quote. The increasing desire for autonomy and flexibility at work is often expressed in efforts to control hours. Managing the transition to fewer hours might come through working part-time, self-employment, doing freelance work. Our research shows a very significant increase in these forms of employment among the 55 and over age group, especially compared for those in mid-career. So, of course, that said, doesn't mean that going from earning a paycheck, being a W-2 employee to the 1099 employee, is easy. I mean, it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of planning. You need to think about the money, the emotional commitment, develop a business plan, and you're learning new things. You're learning bookkeeping, taxes. You have to think about taxes differently. Pick up maybe some marketing skills, and how do you price your services or your product? But a lot of what people do is, they can research it and most importantly, tap into their network to test out their business ideas. And one of the, I think most of you have probably seen it. I think this is a good thing that's happened over the past 20 years. There's been more of an ecology that has developed. Colleges and universities, accelerators, incubators, work sharing spaces, small business development centers, SCORE. I mean, there's just a lot of resources for people to be tapping into. AARP has its Work for Yourself at 50 plus program. And in my experience, the most valuable resource are other people who are self-employed. I mean, you go talk to people and you say, well, how do you price your product? You might be in the exact same business as they are, and they're going to tell you about their experience, the mistakes that they made. And so there are a lot of resources for people to tap into, which is going to provide the transition to this terrific panel that we have. And I'm just going to do just very brief introductions. John Andrews is self-employed fund development and grant writing consultant. He's based in Los Angeles, and he's a former nonprofit executive director. Jackie Davis is a self-employed marketing consultant and contract employee. She's based in Boston, and she's a former marketing professional for tech companies. Sylvia Fox is a self-employed dynamic aging coach and owner of Fitz Fox Coaching in Portland, Oregon. And she's a former journalist and journalism professor. And Robin Pound is an independent contractor with Wave in Kentucky. And she's a former claims specialist and office manager at insurance agencies. And by the way, we also want your questions, so put them in the chat, and Doug will be monitoring, and some other people will be monitoring, and we'll get your questions as soon as we can. So to start off, I'm just going to ask each panelist, briefly tell us a little bit about your background, what you do now, and why you decided to pursue this way of working at this point. And I'll just start with arbitrary, but I'm going to start with you, Jackie, and then we'll move on from there. Jackie?
Chris, this is Kelly from Encore. If you could stop sharing your screen, that would be great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Done.
Thanks, Chris. What I'm doing is, I'd say it's a smorgasbord of activities right now. My background, as you mentioned, was in marketing at Fortune 500 high-tech companies. And for 14 years, I ran my own residential interior design business. Right now, I'm doing a combination of marketing consulting, interior design projects, and I'm an emerging storyteller.
You myself. John? John? John, you're next. I can't hear. You're muted. John, you're muted. Why don't we go to Sylvia? Sylvia?
Hi, everyone. Yes, Sylvia Fox, and it's great to be here with all of you. I am a retired journalism professor and still a journalist for many years, California State University, Sacramento. And I retired at 55 because I couldn't wait to figure out what else was out there and what else I wanted to do. And so over time, I have totally changed for a while and become, I call it a dynamic aging coach, but I work with older adults, whether it's life coaching, actual physical dynamic aging, realignment of spine, movement, I would say movement. And I also have gotten back to my roots by invitation for I edit memoirs. And so all of my skills since that I worked on after retirement gave me a whole lot of experience in other things that I was interested in. But now I've come back and I've put it all together and helping people with my knowledge base now.
Very cool. And John?
You hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I apologize. Having power outages here in Long Beach, California, and it's been interrupting the communication. Very briefly, I have been in healthcare and human services in some way, shape, or form for about 40 years. I spent 10 years as an executive director of a community clinic serving low-income, uninsured, and marginally insured patients. I did a lot of learning on the job, grant writing, fundraising, and I've slowly but surely morphed into this on a semi-retired, half-time basis. I love what I'm doing. And my granddaughter reminded me on Saturday to, in an effort to continue to look young, to remember to get the haircut.
And Robin?
Hello, everybody. My name is Robin Pounds. I am an insurance person. I started in 1985, so I will be entering my 40th year. And I've done all sorts of things in insurance. I think I've done everything there is to do in insurance except own one, and I have no interest in that. About 5 years ago, I was trying to figure out how I'm going to retire and or how I can slow down a little bit. And I looked up Wave and I applied and went with them, and they have been phenomenal. And I could just go on forever. Wave, I'm sorry, I don't mean to, but they are very good. And I've worked with them for the last 5 years, and I've been consistent and constant and moving me around to different jobs that need help. And it's been a wonderful experience.
So, Jackie, I'm concerned. I'm going to ask each of you this exact same question. You know, what do you find are the advantages of being self-employed as opposed to being in traditional employment? I mean, do you find that there are things about this that are desirable that you really like about being self-employed?
Yes, I enjoy being self-employed, particularly contracting, because I look at contracting sort of like dating. You know, you have the short-term project, it's defined, everybody's on their best behavior. You get to check each other out. If it works, that's good, you continue on. And if it doesn't, you know, the contract ends. I find that I have a lot of flexibility. I get to choose the types of projects that I'd like to work on. And I'm able to sometimes work from home. Sometimes there's an opportunity to work in a hybrid type of situation. So I'm going into the office a few days a week. And I find that I am around people that are as curious as I am about new activities and learning things. And I think that it suits me. It gives me more flexibility. I'm not working 60, 70 hours a day. I'm not getting calls all hours of the night. I have a set number of hours. And once I've done those hours for the week, I'm done.
John, same question to you.
Well, certainly the flexibility of being able to set your own schedule to as best as possible, pick and choose among the clients and the interests that you have. Tremendous advantage and allowing personal life to have a little more balance than certainly when I was working full time. Obviously, one of the challenges is what I call the roller coaster of You may be very busy in June and July, and you may not be so busy in August and September. So if people understand that and can plan appropriately and try to spread out their activities and their consulting agreements and their grant writing as much as possible, that's certainly one of the challenges.
And Robin?
Well, there's a lot of things I like about it. I like being at home. I like not being at an office. As I get older, I'm not really people-y. So I like being with my family, as horrible as that is to say. I like the being able to take care of things at home as I work. I like being able to choose which job would suit me better. They're very good at giving me different options as I'm in between, if I go in between jobs. And I can go from full-time hours to part-time hours whenever it works with my schedule and what I have going on. And there's really no downsides to working from home unless you miss the socialization, which is not my thing. So I'm okay.
And Sylvia?
Well, I would ditto everything that everybody has said. Um, what I like is being able to control my schedule on, and it's not the daily schedule. Like I like being outside in the summer. I like, we live on a river and I want to be outside. So I find that I make fewer of the appointments and commitments during good weather months. And then I tend to ramp it up during winter and cold winter months because I feel more like it. So I love that I can figure out when I want to get really busy and when I want to immerse and when I don't. And I also, because I have such diverse kinds of work, I'm always looking for what excites me and going for that project. And then I'm also looking for what bores me and trying to back out of those commitments. So I also find that I have an aversion after having worked for so many years on a schedule. I have an aversion, it's like allergy or claustrophobia for, having to say that I'm going to be somewhere Monday, Wednesday, or Friday at a certain hour or whatever. And it's taken me a fair amount of coaching to identify that, say it's okay. And so I'm trying to commit more to work that doesn't have time certains to it. And that makes me happier too. So I don't find any downside yet to working for myself. I'm a great boss for myself.
So John, okay, so what was the unexpected challenge when you made this transition? Was there something that you didn't anticipate that you had to adjust to? I mean, where did some of the challenges come in for you?
Were you talking to me, Chris?
Yes.
Well, certainly the challenge is that you're competing against other consultants who have established relationships with potential clients, and you may have a very high opinion and assessment of your skills and your knowledge base and your ability to deliver, but certainly convincing clients to consider changing, transferring, or allocating a specific project to you, that proved to be a bigger challenge. I guess I gave myself more credit for having this established network of people who I could call and or email, and immediately consulting arrangements would be falling into place. And certainly in the beginning, that just didn't happen.
And Jackie, for you, I mean, when you made your shift from employment for the W-2 world, 1099 world, the contract world, were there some unexpected challenges or there some adjustments that you had to make that you hadn't anticipated?
I think the biggest challenge for me was to convince potential employers that I was really up to doing the work, that I had to demonstrate and convince them, because I think that some of them have a perspective that's not correct. It reminds me of, I looked at a bird out on my deck one day, and the bird was pecking on what I thought was a dead tomato plant. And I couldn't figure out, well, was the bird getting nourishment from it? Was it getting materials to build a nest? Or was it just doing it for the sheer pleasure? I didn't know. And I said, well, but it's dead. And I think that sometimes employers look at people over 50 that way. They see someone dried up, spent with no use, and the bird found utility. And I say, well, we have utility also. I see us as vibrant and juicy and full of knowledge and expertise and skills that any employer would be lucky to have. So it was particularly in marketing, because things have changed so much since I was starting marketing 30 years ago. With social media and whatnot, I had to demonstrate that, yes, I can actually do this work, even though I've got a head full of gray hair.
And Robin, now Wave is like a platform, right? That's what you're working off of. Explain a little more about how it works with Wave.
Wave is yeah, it's like they have a list of clients. They have a clientele that need help within their agencies, and they have a group of us, or there are us contractors that would fit, that they know would fit or wouldn't fit with each client. So they will, get in contact with us, or if we're looking, we'll ask them to look for us and let us know these certain people are looking for work. How does this fit? Here's their description. Is this something that would work for you? And they're very good at matching up your needs with theirs, actually, is what they do. And
Okay.
my biggest challenge, and it was, you know what I'm going to say, Chris, because my biggest challenge, because I knew it going in, and I was not as prepared as I could have been, was taxes. And I had to learn real quick how to be good at that.
Yes.
How
I
to be
think
good at that.
everybody has made mistakes early on when it comes to taxes.
Yes, and or else Uncle Sam will be your best friend. And so I didn't want that friend. So I had to learn how to do my estimates and be real diligent and make that a priority. If you can do that, this is great for you. But yes, you want to make sure you are good with prepaying and your estimates, for sure.
And Sylvia, same thing for you. What were there some challenges that you hadn't expected, or things that you realized, hey, I need to learn this really quick?
I think the first challenge the first year was I never had to market myself. I was at a university and they just filled up the classrooms and I got my paycheck. And pretty soon, all of a sudden, I'm having to tell people what my worth was. And so I actually did a fair amount of marketing classes and to decide how was I going to tell my story. The other challenge was for someone who's gotten a paycheck my whole life, all of a sudden I had to determine what my dollar value was. And then I had to have the courage to ask for that dollar value. And that was a big one. And it took me quite a few years to find the sweet spot. And it was very much deciding what the value of my time was. Ultimately, it came to that. And then and the surprise, so the challenge originally was all of that. The greatest surprise was in where I started to work, and whether I called it dynamic aging or whether I'm coaching memoirs or and I'm working with senior mobility. My age became my credibility and my credential, which I didn't factor in. So originally I thought it was my challenge, and in fact it still is my asset. So I always tell people my age, which is 72.
Okay, so Jackie, someone comes to you, they've been in a job, they're 60 years old, and for whatever reason, they want to join the ranks of the self-employed. What are some tips that you would give that person, 2 or 3 tips you give that person? These are the 3 things you should be considering or you should think about. Not that you don't want to make this transition, but you want to think about these as you're making this transition.
Okay. One thing that they really need to think about is when you are self-employed or you're contracting, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So you may not get those same health benefits or retirement benefits that you are accustomed to. So that's something you need to take into consideration. Also, I'd say you need to determine whether or not, like, for example, Robin says she's not really social. So some people say they want to go out on their own and they find out that they don't really like being alone. So you really need to know what type of person you are and if you are comfortable with being alone and if you're comfortable with going out and asking for the business. The other thing I'd say is to really network, 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 because I think that there are positions out there that you can assume, but you don't really know where some of them are. But if you consult with uh, past co-workers, past employers, friends, whomever, they may lead you to different types of opportunities. I attended an alumni event, I think it was March or April of 2019, and representatives from Flex Professionals were there giving a presentation about non-traditional work for people who had at least 10 years of experience. And their website says it's connecting businesses with exceptional talent for full-time, part-time, and project work. And I thought, I want to be considered an exceptional talent. So I submitted my resume to Flex, and in July of 2019, I started a full-time 6-month contract that got extended for another 6 months, but ended because of the pandemic. And so it was a networking event that I attended that really helped me make that transition.
Cool. And I just want to say, if you have questions for the panelists, just put them in the chat and we'll get to your questions. But I have other questions. I'm going to keep going because I have questions, but I would love to get to anybody's question and feed them in. So Sylvia, I'm curious. I have a suspicion that, like many people, you probably underpriced yourself at first. How did you figure out what to charge?
That's such a great question. So honestly, when I started to work, I mean, if I was making $1 an hour, it was point of pride, because I didn't believe that what I was doing was that so profound, or why couldn't anyone do it? I undervalued my own experience. So the more I got out there and I started working with people and I started getting good feedback and I was using them for references, the tipping point for me was that I didn't want to work harder to make a lot of money. So it ultimately came down to literally what was the value of my time worth. And if someone didn't want to pay me that, then I didn't want to sacrifice that time. So I'm not the most expensive in, whether I'm editing a memoir or I'm uh, teaching senior fitness or I'm life coaching. I'm not the most expensive, but I'm in a good sweet spot that I feel comfortable that if someone doesn't want to pay that, I may not want to work with them. Although I always do a sliding scale if there's someone that I really, really, really want to work with. So that I think and I talk to everyone about it, and I got a lot of encouragement from other people to charge more because everybody could see I was really undervaluing myself, and so they would make me make a commitment. Next client, this is what you're going to charge, and I had to report back because yeah. So that's how I did it. It took a while, but now I feel very comfortable with the value of my time and what I charge. And yeah, it feels good right now.
So John, how did you find your clients? How do you market yourself? How do you network yourself for business?
Well, following a little bit on what Sylvia said, certainly in the world that I live in, nonprofit world, one of the catch-22s is there are many, many, many charitable organizations, what I call small mom and pop type organizations, who they know that they need someone like me, a grant writer, a consultant, but they're in the awkward position that they can't afford it. So early on, I found myself being placed in contact with such organizations, and I'm giving away the farm, so to speak. I'm doing pro bono work. I'm charging minimal fees. I dropped my sliding fee scale, as Sylvia mentioned, and all of a sudden it hit me that this is fine, but it's really not getting me in the direction that I want to go. So now the marketing and the networking of those mom and pop nonprofits continues, and it's a very unfortunate because what I call the big boys and the big girls, the American Cancer Society and muscular dystrophy and so forth, they have huge staffs, they have multi-million-dollar budgets, and they have the capacity to go after large resources, whereas these mom and pops don't, and oftentimes they don't have the financial resources to even retain me. So it is a real conundrum, and it's something that I try to balance between what I call my well-heeled, well-established clients versus the small mom and pops.
So you have kind of a little portfolio going there, balancing it out. So Robin, I'm curious, when you were making the transition to Wave, how did you think about things like, benefits, retirement savings, making sure that you have some emergency savings? I mean, how did you think through some of those sort of, basic blocks of protecting yourself for the long term?
Well, you want to prepare for that because you're your own boss. So you don't have benefits and you don't have insurance. And everybody's situation is going to be different based off what's going on in their life at the time. For me, my husband is career military. So there you go. That's a benefit for me. And as far as retirement, we are making a huge transition to downsize our family and live smaller and on a property that we bought a long time ago that we're moving to, that we own. So it's like different things are falling into place that we planned 5 years ago, maybe even 7, that we are moving into the wonderful 62, that we're getting there. So we good, I guess better people than us would have started a lot younger, but I didn't. I started when I was 40, 50 years old. So I started late. So as a lay person, you start making these big decisions. What do I want? Do I need my stuff? Do I want less stuff? You have to think what is best for you. And so I pretty much downsized and put money in the savings that I can. It won't be much. And thank goodness for Wave. I can do that well past 62.
Cool. And so, Jackie, what excites you about that? Do you have projects that excite you? What excites you about your business right now?
I love short-term projects. I love being around people. I love being able to express my creativity. So those are the types of projects that I look for. As I said earlier, I'm an emerging storyteller. I have a hard time keeping quiet. So when I'm involved in storytelling, that helps helps me combat some of my loneliness. I'm able to talk with people and and share with them. And I'm just excited about the opportunity to have some flexibility in my life.
And Sylvia, how do you market yourself? Because you have these different aspects of your
Right.
business, and so how do you generate customers? How do you generate business?
Originally, I was working with other groups of people and trying to be part of a panel or trying to get my name out with other people, so that was the networking, and I was getting referrals from other professionals, and that was probably my first marketing venture. When I tried to do marketing in a more traditional way, I found that I put a ton of effort into it, whether it was social media or trying to do group programs, etc. That there wasn't enough payoff for me. So a lot of effort, not much payoff. So now everything that I do is through networking and referrals, everything. And also, there's this thing which I know you all do, is that I really have a lot of curiosity and passion. I love for the things that I want to do. And I remember to talk about them with others, because all of a sudden, someone, like my first memoir that I started to edit, I was actually coaching a client, and she was working on the memoir, and I said, well, would you like me to look at it? And she said, oh, I would love it. I didn't know if you would even look. And pretty soon I got into editing memoirs, which I'm really loving doing. So I think that, yeah. So, and I also had to get out of the idea that I was self-promoting. I am curious. I do have passion, and I shouldn't be embarrassed about talking to anybody about that anywhere, anytime. And that is really how I do my marketing.
And so, John, the question has come in. I'm just modifying it a little bit. I'm just curious, and this is for anybody, but I'll just toss it to you, John, just to start off. You know, if you don't have a spouse with benefits, and wondering how to make sure you can maintain financial stability if you move into consulting before Medicare kicks in. Any thoughts along those lines?
Well, that didn't happen for me, so I'm not sure how I could answer that. I worked full-time and I delayed taking Social Security, which I would strongly recommend that anyone considering investigate that, because the longer you delay, there's a nice little bonus that comes when you finally do apply. So I was already well past full retirement age.
Anybody else want to take any thoughts or suggestions?
I would say, oh, go ahead, Jackie.
No, I was just going to say I squirreled away money while I was working full time before I decided to go out on my own. And I had one year where I was paying, I think it was $1,200 a month for my health insurance. And that was ridiculous. But it was something that I had to do. And I used the money that I'd squirreled away to do that.
Sylvia, you were going to say?
Well, I mean, I also had the luxury of, I retired early, so I had a pension. But I think what I would say, just from my own experience, is that if you think you want to start doing this thing, start doing the consulting and getting yourself out there and creating this thing before you sever the paycheck. There's got to be a segue. Almost everybody that I've talked to that has done it my way has felt the need to wait for Medicare, and that, but it doesn't mean that you can't do a lot on your way there. But that's a reality. Our health insurance is holding us up.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, sir, and for each of you, were there mentors, were there resources that helped you think through what it is you're going to do, help you think through this self-employment journey that you're on? What was the sort of resources that you tapped into, whether that's a friend or a mentor or an organization that kind of helped you launch your business? And I'll just start with you, Jackie.
I consulted people within my alumni organization because some of them have been entrepreneurs, and I went to them for help to get some information about how to actually get the business up and running. I've also since then been watching some of the SCORE webinars. I think SCORE is an excellent resource for people who knowing nothing about business, and being able to find mentors there who have had the experience in whatever area that you're interested in pursuing.
And then Robin?
Well, I jumped in with both feet. I didn't think it through real well. I just knew I had to make a change in my personal life. I was getting tired. I couldn't keep doing the same thing for 40 years anymore. And so I basically just work at home. I just looked up work at home. Wave came up. I did a research on Wave. I thought I'll apply. and I applied, and I got a call back, and I tried it. They hooked me up with my first job, and I honestly, I was just lucky. I was just lucky that I picked the right thing on the first try. I didn't do a lot of like I said, I didn't do a lot of research on taxes and stuff. So I just kind of jumped in. You may not want to do it that way like I did it. That's just how I usually roll in my life. But I am so thankful that I did. They have been phenomenal, and it was a great choice for me and my lifestyle.
And Sylvia?
So what happened with me is after I retired, I ended up, I became a Zumba instructor, totally different, and created a huge network from there. And from there, I ended up doing a pretty intensive fitness training through a studio in San Francisco Bay, 3 years. And when I got out of that person became my mentor, and she had a very successful studio and still mentors me and supports me. And then I went into a different training program, which is the life coaching out of Sacramento, and did that intensive training for a year. That had a whole support group and mentorship out of there. And then from there, there's all these organizations associated with this where we kept on meeting and having mentors. So I felt very supportive. I would also say that I definitely, I like not picking one thing. Like, so I'd done journalism the whole time, and I was like, not doing journalism. What else am I interested in? And then immerse. And I find that is how I do it. I immerse, I get everything out of it, and then I have that knowledge base, and I might be working on it. And then I get maybe a little bored, and I go, so what else? And I dive in. And so eventually what I find is that it all comes together. Somehow all of those skills come together, and I have a more robust practice. But I also, the ultimate question is mentorship. I have a lot of people that I can ask for, what do I do? How do I do it? And also still offering me opportunities.
And John, same thing. Mentors, resources, what did you tap into?
Well, as others have mentioned, when I began the networking, two of my very key contacts in that networking were also doing consulting and grant writing. They were very well established, highly respected, and quite honestly, they both had more business than they could handle. So they began shifting over and recommending me to some of their prospective clients, who again fell into this mom and pop category of nonprofits, but for whom my two contacts just couldn't handle. They didn't have the time. They had enough other major projects. So that was very important, because that allowed me to do two things: get out there, and also it brought in a diversity from the perspective of I had been working in healthcare, and all of a sudden I'm getting referrals for clients who are doing warm water aquatic therapy, serving the homeless, a children's theater group. So all of a sudden I found myself involved with other organizations who were doing good works that I knew not a lot about, but quickly had to get up to speed so that I could meet their needs to go after various grants and resources to allow their organizations to continue to operate.
Okay, so we're near the end when I transfer things over to Doug Dixon, but I just want to go Jackie, John, Sylvia, Robin. Arbitrary, just going to go that. But a parting thought for people who are thinking about becoming self-employed, some parting thought that you would like to leave people with to think about. Jackie?
I would say be curious, be courageous, go out and do some research, because I think over 50 and beyond, you still have a lot to give, and it ain't over till it's over.
John?
I would echo those comments and say, do your homework, whether it be the personal finances, insurance, etc. Also do your homework from the standpoint is, what is this area that you see yourself being self-employed in? What is the market? What is the need, if any? who are you competing with, and really take a good hard look at that before you jump.
Sylvia?
I would say be fearless, be curious, don't say no to anything for a while. And, I just find it's a sensation of leaping off the precipice a little bit. And the excitement will carry you. So not that I disagree, but I just found that if I make it about that I have to be successful and that's the end goal, that's not going to carry me. So be fearless, be curious, have fun.
Robin?
Oh, I agree with all what my co-panelists have said. You have to decide in your life. I mean, I just got tired of sitting in a box at an office, and I like to walk out to my garden. I like to feel like I live a life beyond the box. And sometimes you just got to say, I'm going to do it. And, think through your finances, yes, and your health benefit issues, decide what is important to you and go do it. Go have fun and enjoy life. And it's still, yes, Jackie, 50 is still very young.
Well, on that note, and I can't disagree with that. That's wonderful. I'd like to turn it back over to Doug Dixon.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks to the panel. I mean, this is wonderful advice and wonderful conversation. There were some inputs from the chat that I'm going to capture, and we'll pass that along in the information that we provide in a few days. I do want to, we've been working on something that we're calling a starter kit, and I'm going to share my screen and walk you through that very briefly. Let's see here it is. Okay, so this is what we're calling a starter kit, and we'll be developing this over the summer, and we'll have a much more complete version, but I will share this in the information that we follow up, and I wanted to share it briefly today, just to give you a sense of what it looks like, and to the extent that it can be helpful, we can use it now. This is intended to support the work of coaches and consultants and others who are providing support to people who are themselves thinking about what comes next in their lives. And for those who are considering freelance contract consulting and gig work, this is something that we hope can be useful. If I can get the slide to change, that would be good. There we go. So the panel talked about this. How do you get started? And the question about exploring possibilities is a place to start. Oftentimes it's friends and colleagues, and I think some of the members of the panel talked about this, doing some networking, also some online research, and in some cases working with a mentor or a business coach can be helpful. And then there's the question of actually getting started in terms of setting up shop. We'll talk about business services in a moment. The Encore Network does offer a peer consulting program for members that can be helpful, and also affinity groups, also for members. We'll talk more about that in a second. Somebody mentioned SCORE, I don't remember who it was, but they have wonderful workshops. They have mentoring programs that can be helpful as well. And then there is finding clients. And oftentimes the first client comes through either a former employer or a friend or colleague, someone who knows you, who knows what you can do, and knows an opportunity. There also are online platforms, which again I'll talk about in a second, that can be helpful, and Wave is one of them. Flex Professionals is another. And then, of course, there is outreach that can be done either online or in other ways. These are some of the online platforms. And by the way, there are a couple that were mentioned in the chat, and I'm going to integrate those. But Wave, our sponsor today, and Robin has talked about her experience with them. Jackie's talked about Flex Professionals. But there are other online platforms that provide opportunities and match people to those opportunities. So Upwork does freelance work, flexible as flex work. Work has contract consulting and freelance opportunities. We work remotely, and Remotive is technology related, but it's all remote work on their website. And Side Hustle and some of the others are looking at ways to kind of add to your portfolio and create a different kind of mix. And then there's a range of business services, and all of our panelists mentioned one or more of these. So oftentimes people who are working on their own like to use a virtual assistant because it's a way for them to expand their time, right? They don't have to spend their time scheduling, or they don't have to spend their time making presentations or whatever it is that they use their virtual assistant for. So this is a way to think about how do you add capacity to your day. We talked about health insurance. We talked about retirement planning. Sometimes if you're in business, you want to have a website to be a kind of calling card. There are people who do that work, and fairly inexpensively. You talked about marketing before. There are people who provide that kind of support. I think it was Robin talked about tax planning. You can often use your own tax preparer to help you think about what you need to gather in terms of documentation and so on in order to be able to claim deductions and to report accurately your income and so on. You may want to work with an accountant to help set up your books. Typically, freelance consulting and contract workers don't need to incorporate, but there are circumstances when that's the case. So you may want to work with a lawyer. So our goal is to provide leads and support and information about these various kinds of business service providers that can be useful for people who are thinking about starting a business on their own. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and say that we are very appreciative of Chris and Robin and Sylvia and John and Jackie for the time that they've spent and for the insights that they've provided today on our panel. We always ask people to tell us what they think about the program and whether they learned. So Kelly, can you launch the poll? We also want to thank our sponsor, Wave, and I think we've all learned a little bit more about Wave and what they do. Also want to remind you that we will be providing a copy of the recording, the slides that Chris had. I'll provide the slides that I just showed, along with other information in a follow-up email, and that will probably arrive in your inbox next week, early next week. And then we have some upcoming programs. On June 13th, we have an affinity group summit where all of our affinity groups are going to come together and talk about what they do. And we're looking for your input, your participation, your ideas about not only ways in which these affinity groups can be more effective and to work together, to collaborate, but also what other affinity groups you might be interested in. On July 17th, CoGenerate has done some research with AARP recently, asking the question, what do younger leaders want from older professionals, older leaders? And they'll be sharing that research and talking about next steps in that process. We'll talk about how we can be involved. And then on September 18th, there's a program on solopreneurship. So today we talked about freelance, we talked about consulting, contract, gig work, other independent workers. We're going to be focusing on solopreneurship, which is one-person businesses. in September. So we'll continue this theme then. And then finally, if you're not already a member of the Encore Network, we strongly encourage you to take a look at that. You can go to encorenetwork.org and push the join button and learn more about the benefits, learn more about the process of joining. That gives you access to things like peer consulting, which can be very useful for someone who is thinking about going out on their own. Affinity groups that can be very supportive as well. And of course, our regular monthly programs. So with that, it's 1 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for participating today. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.